Good evening, dear friend. Tonight we journey to ancient Cyprus, where love first touched the earth. Tell me, where are you right now as you listen to this tale? What time is it in your corner of the world? There's something beautiful about knowing that stories connect us across distances, whether you're watching midnight stars or enjoying evening quiet. Whatever your hour, wherever your place, let this moment know you're ready for ancient tales. Picture yourself settling deeper into comfort as jasmine-scented breezes carry whispers from forgotten shores. Close your eyes if you wish. We're traveling back 3,000 years to when gods walked among mortals, when beauty itself wore divine form. Long before poets sang of Helen's legendary face, the sea itself dreamed of perfect beauty. Kronos had cast his father's severed flesh into wine-dark waves. From that primal violence came something impossibly gentle. The ocean began to foam, not with rage, but with divine anticipation. White bubbles danced like scattered pearls on sapphire silk beneath afternoon sun. The water grew warm, then golden, as if lit from within by captured starlight. Finally luminous as dawn breaking over sleeping islands wrapped in mist. From this sacred foam rose a figure that made even the waves pause in wonder. Aphrodite emerged fully formed, complete as a prayer finally answered. Her skin held lustrous glow, of pearl mixed with moonbeams' gentle light. Her hair flowed like liquid gold, catching light that seemed to have no earthly source. When she first opened her eyes, the exact color of summer sky at twilight, even dolphins surfaced to glimpse her radiance. She was not born as mortals are born, through struggle and pain and blood. She simply was magnificent and complete, love itself given form and breath. The Nereids, sea nymphs who had witnessed countless births, had never seen anything to rival this moment. Here was beauty that would reshape the very foundations of desire itself. The newborn goddess needed somewhere to place her perfect feet, somewhere worthy of love's first earthly steps. The island of Cyprus rose from depths to meet her divine presence, as if the very earth recognized its destined role in cosmic drama. Gentle slopes crowned with ancient cypress trees bowed gracefully toward the shore. Flowers that had never existed before burst spontaneously into impossible colors. Roses learned to perfume morning air with sweetness that had no name. Myrtle trees bent their silver-green branches in reverent salute to beauty. The Ori, those divine sisters who governed turning seasons, appeared from golden mist to dress the goddess. These robes shimmered like captured starlight, woven from materials that existed nowhere else. They placed upon her divine head a crown of gold so fine. It seemed spun from concentrated sunbeams, gathered at moment of dawn. Each graceful step she took across sandy beach left behind blooming anemones, where her tears of pure joy touched fertile earth beneath her feet. The very first violets opened, their shy purple faces to world. Birds fell silent in olive groves, then burst into songs more beautiful than any they had ever sung. Even Mediterranean wind gentled itself, afraid to disturb single strand of her luminous hair flowing free. This was Cyprus transformed forever, no longer merely another island, but sacred sanctuary of beauty itself. Word of her impossible beauty traveled, faster than swiftest merchant ships, carried on every breeze to every corner of immortal realm. The gods of Mount Olympus stirred restlessly in their marble halls, suddenly aware of something magnificent calling to them across wine-dark sea. Zeus himself felt the pull, that familiar stirring of divine desire. But this time carried different quality, entirely unlike his usual conquests. This beauty was not mortal and fragile, like shepherdesses or princesses. This was raw power clothed, in perfect grace and divine form. Divinity itself wearing mask, of absolute loveliness and charm. When Aphrodite finally ascended, to cloud-wreathed Olympus above, the very air grew sweet with possibility and promise. Flowers bloomed spontaneously in marble corridors, where no flowers had ever grown. The usually stern Hera found herself, smiling without understanding why. Apollo's golden lyre sang melodies, sweeter than any he had composed. Even Ares, brutal god of war, set down his bronze spear to stare in wordless wonder. She moved through their divine midst, like music made visible, like poetry given living form. Every god felt stirring of love in their immortal hearts, not merely for her overwhelming beauty, but for very concept of love she embodied in her perfect form. Aphrodite grasped full extent of her power from that very first moment. She was desire itself personified, fundamental force that draws heart to willing heart across space. Soul to yearning soul, through endless time and distance. But this was far more than mere physical lust or shallow attraction between forms. This was deep cosmic current that flows beneath all creation. Eternal yearning that makes flowers turn faces toward life-giving sunlight. She could see with perfect clarity golden threads of love connecting every living thing in universe. These strands were invisible to all other eyes divine, but bright as lightning to her immortal vision. With gentlest touch of divine will, she could strengthen precious bonds between souls seeking connection. Or she could weave entirely new connections where none had existed before. Single glance from twilight-colored eyes could kindle devotion that would burn steadily through multiple lifetimes. One perfect smile could heal hearts shattered by loss or betrayal or cruel indifference of fate. Yet she wielded tremendous power with wisdom that seemed to belie her apparent youth and recent birth. Love that was forced or compelled was not truly love at all. Merely obsession wearing love's beautiful mask of pretense. Genuine affection had to grow naturally from fertile soil of willing hearts. In her palace on sacred Cyprus, where air always smelled of roses and salt spray, Aphrodite kept mirror unlike any ever crafted by mortal hands. This was not mere polished bronze, reflecting physical appearance only. Instead, it was crystallized wisdom surface that showed true beauty of a mortal soul within. Mortals who gazed into divine mirror saw themselves exactly as they were. Stripped of all pretense and comfortable illusion they wore. Some recoiled in genuine horror, finally seeing ugliness of inner nature laid completely bare before them. Others wept with overwhelming joy, discovering beauty they had never suspected they possessed deep within themselves. The goddess used sacred mirror to teach those who sought her divine guidance and blessing. True beauty, she would whisper, in voices soft as summer rain, comes not from perfect features or flawless skin that time destroys. It radiates from kindness freely given, without thought of reward. From love generously shared, even when heart has been wounded. From souls that consistently choose compassion over cruelty always. The most genuinely radiant mortals were often those with weathered faces and calloused hands from honest work. People whose inner light had grown bright through long years of caring for others less fortunate. the goddess learned as much as she taught through sacred encounters. She watched endless variety of human hearts with growing fascination. Sleep now comes calling, gentle as ocean waves, lapping Cyprus shores in moonlight. Let Aphrodite's story settle over your dreams like silk. Now we continue to follow her heart as it discovers the difference between duty and desire burning bright. Rest deeper into comfort as we journey onward through her divine tale. Zeus, father of gods and undisputed master of lightning that splits ancient skies, gazed upon new goddess with eyes that held both burning desire and hard-earned wisdom from centuries. He recognized in her beauty a power that could either unite his carefully ordered realm or tear it apart completely. Love without any constraints was pure chaos dancing wild. Beautiful but ultimately destructive, like fire consuming sacred groves. Beauty without proper boundaries was dangerous as wildfire, consuming everything in its path. Yet to suppress or restrain such fundamental forces of creation would diminish very essence of existence itself completely. So King of all gods made decision that was both coldly political and genuinely paternal. He would give Aphrodite in sacred marriage to Hephaestus, the divine smith and craftsman, steadiest and most loyal of all his immortal children. The wedding was decreed with all magnificent pomp that Olympus could muster. Golden halls rang with celebration that lasted 7 days and 7 star-filled nights. Ambrosia flowed like honey-sweet rivers throughout divine realm above. Every god and goddess brought wedding gifts worthy of such unprecedented union. Yet beneath glittering festive surface, tension hummed like tightly strung lyre string ready to snap. Here was perfect beauty yoked to honest craftsmanship and skill. Divine passion bound forever to patient devotion and care. Hephaestus loved his divine wife with complete devotion of master craftsman for his greatest masterpiece. Every morning before dawn, he would forge new gifts in his blazing workshop below. Jewelry that somehow captured and held actual starlight within precious metals gleaming. Mirrors that showed only beauty, reflecting back loveliness in any face gazing within. Combs that made golden hair shine like molten metal, fresh from his divine furnace. His underground workshop rang constantly, with rhythmic sound of hammer, shaping expressions of pure adoration. He created for her alone, throne of ivory and gold. Its graceful arms carved, with intricate scenes depicting love's triumph over obstacles. He built her chariot drawn by snow-white doves flying, their delicate wings gleaming with bronze and silver inlay. Each creation was prayer, wrought carefully in precious metal. Hymn to her beauty sung in sapphires and diamonds bright. But Aphrodite received offerings with polite gratitude that never warmed into genuine affection. Like queen graciously accepting tribute from distant province that held no real interest. Her immortal heart remained completely untouched by devotion. She appreciated remarkable skill and respected unwavering kindness, but felt no answering fire kindling in divine breast. No spark of romantic love. Love simply could not be commanded into existence by force. Not even by Zeus himself with all his divine power. She wandered halls of shared palace, like caged songbird beautiful. Beyond description but restless, admired constantly but never truly seen or understood. Ares had always been storm to Apollo's gentle sunshine. Raw chaos that balanced Athena's careful order and wisdom. Where other gods sought glory, through wisdom or craft or artistic beauty displayed, he found truest purpose in honest clash of bronze against bronze on battlefield. His halls echoed constantly, with battle songs of warriors fallen in glorious combat. His feasts seasoned with tales of heroic deeds performed in humanity's darkest hours. He was feared by mortals who prayed their sons would never meet him on blood-soaked battlefields below. Barely tolerated by fellow gods, who saw him as necessary, but crude and unrefined. Useful in crisis moments, but lacking social graces. Then Aphrodite entered his world, like dawn breaking over, blood-soaked battlefield at sunrise, bringing unexpected beauty to places that knew only violence and death eternal. He first glimpsed her at feast celebrating divine victory over rebellious giants defeated. She sat beside patient husband, politely listening to tedious tale of metallurgy and forge temperatures. Her eyes seemed distant as stars, focused on something far beyond immediate conversation around her. But when she glanced across crowded hall and met Ares' burning gaze, something fundamental shifted in cosmic balance of power. Here was someone who might understand terrible beauty of passion, completely unleashed and wild. Someone who could appreciate magnificent majesty of desire that acknowledged no boundaries. Their courtship unfolded slowly, in hidden places far away from divine gossip and suspicion. Far from Hephaestus's trusting, wounded eyes that saw nothing. They met in sacred groves, dedicated to no particular deity, where ancient olive trees kept secrets older than Olympus. Places where mortal and divine worlds touched briefly at twilight, creating spaces outside normal rules that governed immortal behavior. Ares would arrive disguised, in mortal form carefully crafted. His usual divine radiance, dimmed to avoid detection. Aphrodite came as herself, for who could possibly mistake that transcendent beauty for anything merely mortal and ordinary? They walked together through enchanted gardens where every flower bloomed more brilliantly for their divine presence. She taught him with infinite patience that love was not conquest, but willing surrender of heart. Not taking of what was desired, but generous giving of treasures. Not victory claimed through force, but vulnerability willingly shared between equal souls united. He showed her fierce joy of passion completely unashamed of its own burning intensity. Raw beauty of desire that refused to apologize for its existence in world, or dim its fire for others' comfort and ease. Their love was neither gentle affection that grows slowly through years of shared marriage vows, nor desperate hunger of first attraction between inexperienced hearts yearning. Instead, it was perfect recognition, soul calling to soul, across vast loneliness that defined immortal existence through time. Their divine secret could not remain hidden forever from eyes that knew how to look. Love leaves traces like footprints in wet sand after tide. Visible to those who understand subtle signs of hearts in transition and change. Hephaestus began to notice his wife's growing distraction. Way her twilight-colored eyes would drift during conversation. New songs she hummed while wandering through palace halls. Melodies he had never heard in all his centuries. Her sudden interest in gardens and groves she had never bothered to visit during years of their marriage together. He was not jealous by nature, being fundamentally secure in his own worth and divine purpose given. But neither was he blind to changes occurring in someone he loved beyond existence. With infinite patience of master craftsman devoted and deadly precision of divine smith working, he began to forge most delicate trap ever created. Threads of bronze finer than spider silk gleaming, yet strong as mountain roots anchored deep in earth. Invisible as morning mist, yet capable of holding even divine strength captive. He wove magical bonds throughout private chamber where his wife received guests, creating net that would spring instantly at touch of lovers caught in forbidden embrace. The trap was masterpiece of both mechanical engineering and emotional heartbreak combined. Crafted by hands that trembled with suppressed pain and sorrow. When Ares next came calling, drawn by love stronger than wisdom or caution, the net fell like fate. Rest now, dear listener. Let weight of divine love settle over your thoughts like starlight on calm water. Now we continue with tale of beauty that captured even goddess's immortal heart. Breathe deeper into stillness as we follow love's journey through joy and sorrow. Hephaestus summoned all of Olympus to witness his private shame transformed into public justice. The gods came slowly, reluctantly called by duty, but arriving with hearts heavy with sympathy shared. They found famous lovers still trapped in gleaming bronze threads, beautiful and helpless as figures carved from marble. Apollo turned radiant face away, unable to bear sight of love so exposed and vulnerable before all. Hermes whistled softly, under his breath impressed, despite himself by exquisite craftsmanship of trap so cleverly designed. Even Zeus looked genuinely grave, understanding that this moment would reshape entire divine order. The goddess of love and god of war together, caught in their moment of absolute truth revealed. Neither denying obvious guilt, nor begging pathetically for mercy, they knew they could not deserve. Aphrodite met each divine gaze, with dignity completely intact. Her chin raised proudly, despite circumstances shameful. Her eyes remained calm, as still pools reflecting infinite sky above, showing no shame for choices made with full knowledge of their consequences coming. She had chosen love over duty, passion over safe path of social propriety accepted. She would not insult intelligence with fabricated excuses weak, or their judgment with false tears shed for appearances only. Ares remained equally silent beside his beloved caught, his usual battlefield bluster replaced by something deeper, more meaningful than boasts. Quiet acceptance of consequences that revealed unexpected depths of character hidden within. The trial lasted exactly 7 days, though final verdict was never really in doubt from beginning. Divine law was absolutely clear about adultery between immortals, especially when it involved deliberate deception of innocent spouse who had given only love. But Zeus found himself facing a puzzle that had no clean solution, one satisfying both justice and wisdom learned through ages. How does one punish love itself without inevitably diminishing force that drives all creation forward? How does one condemn very passion that makes existence meaningful rather than mere survival? King of gods walked golden halls of Olympus for sleepless nights seeking wisdom that seemed to dance mockingly just beyond his divine reach. Hera, his own frequently betrayed wife, watched with bitter amusement that held no real satisfaction. She knew far too well sharp pain of betrayal cutting burning humiliation of public knowledge, crushing weight of marriage bonds, tested repeatedly by wandering desire and broken promises whispered. Yet even she felt grudging sympathy for Aphrodite's impossible situation presented. Trapped between duty imposed and nature Zeus had given. Love once truly awakened follows its own inexorable laws. Recognizes no sovereignty save its own fierce logic. The punishment when it came was elegant in careful complexity and surprising mercy shown. Aphrodite would remain legally married to Hephaestus faithful, but free to love wherever her divine heart led her. Ares would serve exactly 1 year in earthly exile, learning to value what he had risked so carelessly. In quiet aftermath of judgment, when other gods had departed to spread gossip throughout realm, Hephaestus approached his wife with halting steps uncertain. His natural limp seemed more pronounced than usual. Broad shoulders bent under invisible weight of sorrow. He released bronze net with hands that trembled slightly despite their legendary steadiness. Watching as his rival, straightened with dignity intact and warrior's pride, still completely unbroken. The smith god spoke, no words of anger bitterness or recrimination against either of them. Instead he offered Aphrodite, final gift wrought carefully. One last creation forged in fires of his workshop. Cooled not in water, but in salt tears of his own profound grief. It was mirror unlike any he had ever made before in centuries of divine craftsmanship. This one showed not beauty, as mortals typically defined, but love as it truly existed. Wild and uncontainable as storm, terrible and wonderful beyond any mortal comprehension possible. He had learned through pain, sharper than any forge fire, fundamental truth about love's nature. It could not be crafted like precious metal shaped or commanded like obedient servants. Love could only be offered freely and received with gratitude when it chose to bloom. Aphrodite accepted mirror with tears that fell like liquid diamonds precious. Each drop more valuable than any earthly treasure. She understood immediately depth of forgiveness this gift represented completely. Generosity of spirit it required from broken heart. She would treasure it always, not for perfect craftsmanship, but for broken yet noble heart that had shaped it with such careful love. Ares wandered mortal earth during his year of divine punishment, experiencing humanity in ways that gods rarely contemplate or understand completely. He walked among simple shepherds, tending their flocks through dangerous mountain passes narrow. Worked alongside farmers, cultivating fields under blazing sun that burned their weathered skin. Listened to mothers singing ancient lullabies to children who would grow old and die. All in brief span of single divine heartbeat. For first time in immortal existence, he understood what mortals meant when they spoke of love as precious precisely because it was brief as flowers. Every moment stolen from duty and responsibility heavy, every glance exchanged in secret, every touch given in darkness, all carried weight beyond measure, when time itself was eternal enemy of happiness and joy. He learned patience from watching seasons change with precision, astronomical and perfect. Seeing how winter's harsh lessons prepared earth for spring's gentle awakening promised. He discovered humility by helping fishermen mend nets torn by unexpected storms fierce. His divine strength applied to tasks that would be forgotten before next tide returned. God of war began understanding that courage took many forms in mortal life below. That greatest battles were often fought in human hearts, invisible to outside observers. That victory sometimes meant simply enduring another day when hope seemed lost forever. In distant mountains where eagles nested among clouds touching very vault of heaven, prince was born whose beauty rivaled that of gods themselves. Adonis emerged from mother's womb, like sunrise breaking over snow-capped peaks majestic. Perfect in every visible feature, radiant as young Apollo, but somehow warmer to touch. More approachable to mortal eyes, seeking beauty in world. His hair caught and held light, like spun gold thread, gleaming in sunlight bright. His eyes held depths that seemed to reflect infinite sky itself stretching. Even as infant wrapped in royal swaddling clothes, he drew wondering admiration from all who gazed upon face. Flowers bloomed more brilliantly in his presence divine, as if his beauty somehow enhanced their own natural loveliness. Birds sang sweeter songs when he passed beneath olive groves and cypress trees. Very air seemed to shimmer with golden possibility wherever he walked through his mountain kingdom wide. But mortal beauty, however perfect, and God-touched by divine, carries within it inevitable seeds of its own destruction. Time would eventually touch even Adonis with hand, withering and cold. Age would claim even his perfect features bright. Death would gather even his divine radiance gleaming into its silent embrace, as it must gather all things born of mortal flesh. Three fates had woven his life's thread from silk and shadow intertwined together. Beauty and brevity twisted into story that would make even immortal goddesses weep. Let your breathing deepen now as divine love flows through this eternal tale. We continue forward as goddess learns the price of mortal love. Rest deeper into comfort as story unfolds, revealing wisdom earned through loss and pain. Love, when it strikes goddess of love herself, burns with devastating intensity that would utterly consume any mortal heart completely. Aphrodite found herself drawn to mortal prince like moth, to flame that promised both ecstasy and destruction. Unable to resist radiant beauty, yet knowing with divine foresight that her very presence endangered his precious life. She watched him from distance, at first appearing in various mortal disguises carefully crafted. Sometimes as shepherd girl, tending flocks in nearby fields, her divine beauty dimmed just enough to pass for human and ordinary. As merchant's daughter selling flowers in marketplace crowded, observing how his smile could transform even weariest faces. As temple priestess offering prayers for his safety to gods, who might protect what she was falling too deeply in love to guard. Each stolen glance fed growing fire in immortal breast. Each brief glimpse of perfect form made her hunger more desperate. She began to understand for first time what mortals meant when they spoke of love as madness sweet and terrible, as torment that invaded every waking thought and colored every dream with impossible longing bright. Goddess who had orchestrated countless romances between others found herself completely helpless before her own heart's rebellion. She neglected sacred duties, ignored other mortals' prayers for love's blessing in lives. Abandoned ancient role as divine matchmaker devoted to pursue her own impossible desire burning. Unable to resist pull of her own nature, any longer burning, Aphrodite revealed herself to Adonis in secret garden, where roses bloomed eternal and fountains sang with voices sweeter than any nightingales. She appeared in full divine radiance, beauty that would have struck mortals blind with terror, softened just enough to be bearable to human eyes. Adonis, brave as he was beautiful, and wise beyond mortal years, did not flee in terror from her overwhelming presence. Instead, he knelt in reverent wonder, recognizing divinity when it chose to manifest before him. She offered him ultimate gift within her power to bestow. True immortality promised, place among gods where beauty would never fade with seasons, where time would never touch perfect features with decay, where he could live forever in golden halls of Olympus. But Prince, demonstrating wisdom that surprised even goddess, understood that such gifts inevitably came with prices that might prove too dear. He loved his mortal life, despite its brevity certain, his mountain kingdom below, his people who depended on his protection and guidance. Instead of accepting immortality, he proposed different bargain that would honor both natures. They would meet in secret places, where divine and mortal worlds touched briefly at twilight. Their love would exist in stolen moments, precious precisely because they were brief, intense because they were forbidden by natural order separating gods from mortals below. Virgin Huntress watched this developing divine romance with growing displeasure cold that gradually hardened into rage. Artemis, who had sworn eternal chastity as vow, who ruled wild places with silver arrows bright and stern justice uncompromising, saw in Aphrodite's obsession everything she most despised about love's fundamental weakness. Here was goddess systematically abandoning cosmic responsibilities for mere mortal beauty, neglecting duties that affected all creation, turning, choosing personal pleasure over greater good. Criticism cut deeper than simple professional jealousy or territorial dispute between immortal siblings divine. Artemis had always taken fierce pride in purity, in strength that needed no masculine complement to make it complete, in power that stood self-contained and perfectly sufficient unto itself. Aphrodite's desperate passion seemed to mock these virtues, suggesting that even strongest goddesses must eventually submit to love's dominion absolute. That independence was merely illusion, that all divine strength ultimately bent before desire's overwhelming force unleashed. Huntress began to plan intervention with cold precision of master archer, who had never missed intended target chosen. She would not strike directly at divine sister beloved, for such action might provoke Zeus's terrible wrath and upset delicate balance of Olympian politics. Instead, she would eliminate source of temptation itself, remove mortal who had dared to enchant goddess pure. Hunt began as all of Adonis's hunts had begun throughout his young life. With horns singing ancient music through morning mist rising, hounds eager for chase, bred for generations, to pursue dangerous prey through treacherous mountain terrain. Prince rode his favorite stallion through forests he had known, since boyhood spent freely following familiar trails. Paths he had traveled countless times with complete confidence in skill and local knowledge gained. But this particular day carried omens dark that should have warned him to turn back towards safety. Birds fell silent as he passed. Beneath their roosts quiet, flowers closed their petals, despite warm sunshine bright. Even mountain wind seemed to hold its breath in ominous anticipation. Boar that burst from thicket was no ordinary beast, a forest wild and free. This was creature of divine wrath, incarnate and terrible, its tusks sharp as bronze spears, forged in divine furnaces. Its eyes burned with Artemis's, cold fury unleashed, its massive frame moved, with purpose beyond natural animal instinct-driven. Adonis faced it bravely, as befitted noble nature and royal upbringing proper, but mortal skill could not hope to overcome divine purpose absolute. Beast's gleaming tusk found, predetermined mark chosen, piercing prince's thigh, with wound that no mortal healer could possibly mend. As precious life ebbed away among fallen autumn leaves, Adonis whispered Aphrodite's name with his final breath. Aphrodite's grief was terrible, to witness by immortals, divine sorrow that made very foundations of Olympus tremble with sympathetic resonance. Her wails of anguish echoed through marble halls where gods had known only celebration and triumph for centuries. Even Zeus, who had seen civilizations rise and fall without visible emotion, felt moved by daughters' devastating loss complete. Goddess, who had brought joy to countless hearts below, now knew deepest sorrow that love could inflict upon loving soul devoted. She held Adonis's lifeless form for 3 days and nights, refusing all divine comfort, rejecting every attempt to ease her pain. Her tears fell like rain upon his cold flesh, but no amount of grief could restore life to mortal clay. Fates themselves, who rarely showed emotion about duties, watched with something approaching sympathy for Goddess. They alone understood that tragedy served purposes larger than personal happiness. That some lessons could only be learned through suffering. That even gods must sometimes pay price for loving beyond boundaries set by cosmic law eternal. Other gods approached carefully, offering comfort that Aphrodite neither wanted nor could accept in overwhelming grief. Through devastating loss complete, Goddess gained wisdom that would transform understanding of her own divine nature. She had learned difference between loving and being loved, between desire satisfied and love that transcends physical possession completely. Let peace settle over you now, as Goddess learns wisdom through mortal suffering. We continue onward to tales of Paris and Helen, whose love launched 1,000 ships. Breathe gently as we follow love's journey through triumph and devastating cost. Love, when it strikes, Goddess of love herself burns with devastating intensity that would utterly consume any mortal heart completely. Aphrodite found herself drawn to mortal prince like moth, to flame that promised both ecstasy and destruction. Unable to resist radiant beauty, yet knowing with divine foresight that her very presence endangered his precious life. She watched him from distance, at first appearing in various mortal disguises carefully crafted. Sometimes as shepherd girl, tending flocks in nearby fields, her divine beauty dimmed just enough to pass for human and ordinary. As merchant's daughter selling flowers in marketplace crowded, observing how his smile could transform even weariest faces. As temple priestess offering prayers for his safety to gods, who might protect what she was falling too deeply in love to guard. Each stolen glance fed growing fire in immortal breast. Each brief glimpse of perfect form made her hunger more desperate. She began to understand, for first time, what mortals meant when they spoke of love as madness sweet and terrible, as torment that invaded every waking thought and colored every dream with impossible longing bright. Goddess, who had orchestrated countless romances between others, found herself completely helpless before her own heart's rebellion. She neglected sacred duties, ignored other mortals' prayers for love's blessing in lives. Abandoned ancient role as divine matchmaker devoted to pursue her own impossible desire burning. Unable to resist pull of her own nature, any longer burning Aphrodite revealed herself to Adonis in secret garden, where roses bloomed eternal and fountains sang with voices sweeter than any nightingales. She appeared in full divine radiance, beauty that would have struck mortals blind with terror, softened just enough to be bearable to human eyes. Adonis, brave as he was beautiful and wise beyond mortal years, did not flee in terror from her overwhelming presence. Instead, he knelt in reverent wonder, recognizing divinity when it chose to manifest before him. She offered him ultimate gift within her power to bestow. True immortality promised, place among gods where beauty would never fade with seasons, where time would never touch perfect features with decay, where he could live forever in golden halls of Olympus. But Prince, demonstrating wisdom that surprised even goddess, understood that such gifts inevitably came with prices that might prove too dear. He loved his mortal life, despite its brevity certain, his mountain kingdom below, his people who depended on his protection and guidance. Instead of accepting immortality, he proposed different bargain that would honor both natures. They would meet in secret places, where divine and mortal worlds touched briefly at twilight. Their love would exist in stolen moments, precious precisely because they were brief, intense because they were forbidden by natural order separating gods from mortals below. Virgin Huntress watched this developing divine romance with growing displeasure cold that gradually hardened into rage. Artemis, who had sworn eternal chastity as vow, who ruled wild places with silver arrows bright and stern justice uncompromising, saw in Aphrodite's obsession everything she most despised about love's fundamental weakness. Here was goddess systematically abandoning cosmic responsibilities for mere mortal beauty, neglecting duties that affected all creation, turning, choosing personal pleasure over greater good. Criticism cut deeper than simple professional jealousy or territorial dispute between immortal siblings divine. Artemis had always taken fierce pride in purity, in strength that needed no masculine complement to make it complete, in power that stood self-contained and perfectly sufficient unto itself. Aphrodite's desperate passion seemed to mock these virtues, suggesting that even strongest goddesses must eventually submit to love's dominion absolute. That independence was merely illusion, that all divine strength ultimately bent before desire's overwhelming force unleashed. Huntress began to plan intervention with cold precision of master archer, who had never missed intended target chosen. She would not strike directly at divine sister beloved, for such action might provoke Zeus's terrible wrath and upset delicate balance of Olympian politics. Instead, she would eliminate source of temptation itself, remove mortal who had dared to enchant goddess pure. Hunt began as all of Adonis's hunts had begun throughout his young life. With horns singing ancient music through morning mist rising, hounds eager for chase, bred for generations, to pursue dangerous prey through treacherous mountain terrain. Prince rode his favorite stallion through forests he had known, since boyhood spent freely following familiar trails. Paths he had traveled countless times with complete confidence in skill and local knowledge gained. But this particular day carried omens dark that should have warned him to turn back toward safety. Birds fell silent as he passed. Beneath their roosts quiet, flowers closed their petals, despite warm sunshine bright. Even mountain wind seemed to hold its breath in ominous anticipation. Boar that burst from thicket was no ordinary beast, a forest wild and free. This was creature of divine wrath, incarnate and terrible, its tusks sharp as bronze spears, forged in divine furnaces. Its eyes burned with Artemis's, cold fury unleashed, its massive frame moved, with purpose beyond natural, animal instinct driven. Adonis faced it bravely, as befitted noble nature and royal upbringing proper, but mortal skill could not hope to overcome divine purpose absolute. Beast's gleaming tusk found, predetermined mark chosen, piercing prince's thigh, with wound that no mortal healer could possibly mend. As precious life ebbed away among fallen autumn leaves, Adonis whispered Aphrodite's name with his final breath. Aphrodite's grief was terrible, to witness by immortals, divine sorrow that made very foundations of Olympus tremble with sympathetic resonance. Her wails of anguish echoed through marble halls where gods had known only celebration and triumph for centuries. Even Zeus, who had seen civilizations rise and fall without visible emotion, felt moved by daughters' devastating loss complete. Goddess, who had brought joy to countless hearts below, now knew deepest sorrow that love could inflict upon loving soul devoted. She held Adonis's lifeless form for 3 days and nights, refusing all divine comfort, rejecting every attempt to ease her pain. Her tears fell like rain upon his cold flesh, but no amount of grief could restore life to mortal clay. Fates themselves, who rarely showed emotion about duties, watched with something approaching sympathy for Goddess. They alone understood that tragedy served purposes larger than personal happiness. That some lessons could only be learned through suffering. That even gods must sometimes pay price for loving beyond boundaries set by cosmic law eternal. Other gods approached carefully, offering comfort that Aphrodite neither wanted nor could accept in overwhelming grief. Through devastating loss complete, Goddess gained wisdom that would transform understanding of her own divine nature. She had learned difference between loving and being loved, between desire satisfied and love that transcends physical possession completely. Let peace settle over you now, as Goddess learns wisdom through mortal suffering. We continue onward to tales of Paris and Helen, whose love launched 1,000 ships. Breathe gently as we follow love's journey through triumph and devastating cost. Augustus Caesar, first among Romans to call himself imperator, understood Venus's true power better than most mortals ever would in lifetime. He claimed descent from her divine line, but more importantly grasped how love could serve statecraft and empire. Emperor built her temples, not as monuments to passion, but as symbols of peace, order, and prosperity that came when hearts aligned with higher purposes. In Campus Martius he erected theater where citizens could gather to witness stories of love triumphant, beauty celebrated through art, harmony achieved through understanding, rather than conquest by force. Aphrodite watched this mortal ruler with fascination tinged by respect genuine. Here was someone who channeled her gifts toward creation, rather than destruction wrought, who understood that lasting love required foundation stronger than mere desire burning. Augustus wed his daughter Julia to political allies chosen, arranged marriages that served empire's needs while hoping personal affection might bloom within duty's boundaries. Goddess saw in these carefully planned unions echoes of her own arranged marriage to Hephaestus, recognizing that love sometimes grew best when planted in prepared soil. She learned to appreciate mortal devotion that lasted generations uncounted measured, love expressed through laws and customs rather than stolen kisses and promises, whispered in darkness secret. In Rome's golden age, when peace allowed arts to flourish like flowers, in well-tended gardens, poet named Ovid penned verses that captured love's complexity, with wisdom that surprised even gods watching. He wrote of transformations of hearts and bodies, changed by passion's power, of love as force that could remake existence. But Ovid understood what many missed completely, that transformation was not always improvement certain, that change brought both blessing and curse intertwined. His Metamorphoses chronicled tales that Aphrodite knew by heart, but told from perspective that made her see familiar stories with new eyes. Daphne fleeing Apollo became not just failed romance, but tragedy of desire that refused to hear refusal clearly spoken. Narcissus falling in love with his own reflection revealed hollow nature of beauty that loved only itself alone. Through mortal poet's verses, Goddess discovered truths about her own domain that immortal perspective had obscured from view. Love needed limits to remain love pure, beauty required contrast to maintain meaning true. Desire without empathy became mere appetite devastating rather than creating bonds. Poetry taught Goddess that mortals had grasped aspects of love that even she had overlooked in wisdom. In hidden temples scattered across empire-wide, initiates gathered to worship Venus through rituals that promised deeper understanding of love's sacred mysteries. These were not public ceremonies, where citizens offered flowers and wine in daylight, but secret rites where souls prepared themselves for transformation. Goddess walked among worshippers in forms they would not recognize as divine, learning from their devotion what her own nature truly encompassed within. She discovered that mortals had grasped aspects of love that even she had overlooked. In their ceremonies of death and rebirth enacted, they performed truth that love was not possession grasping, but release freely given, not acquisition selfish, but surrender of self to something greater. Mystics spoke of love as ladder climbing, from physical attraction felt through emotional bond shared to spiritual union that transcended individual existence. Aphrodite found herself both teacher and student in these sacred spaces, divine power learning from mortal wisdom, immortal force gaining understanding from finite hearts that burned bright because they would not burn forever in time. Mystery cults revealed that love's highest expression was not personal happiness, but transformation of soul into something capable of loving beyond boundaries set by mortal flesh. As centuries turned like pages, an endless book written, Aphrodite watched love transform itself to meet new ages with fresh faces. In medieval courts where knights pledged service to distant ladies, she discovered courtly love that purified desire through discipline imposed. Troubadours sang ballads that made longing itself sacred and worthy, transforming physical attraction into spiritual quest undertaken. Goddess learned that love could be refined like gold in fire of separation, that distance could intensify devotion rather than diminish its power. In monastery gardens where mystics spoke of divine romance with eternal beloved, she found her own nature reflected in their poetry. Saint Teresa wrote of spiritual marriage with language that Aphrodite recognized from her own deepest experiences felt. Medieval heart had discovered what Goddess was still learning, that love's highest expression transcended individual desire to become union with source of all beauty existing. Even her symbols evolved to meet changing sensibilities. Rose became emblem of both earthly passion and divine mystery. Dove carried messages not only between lovers, but between heaven and earth. Knights who fought for honor of distant ladies understood something essential, that Goddess was beginning to comprehend fully. Love ennobled through service became something greater than mere personal satisfaction. In Florence and Rome, where artists rediscovered classical beauty while creating new visions of human possibility, Aphrodite found herself welcomed back to public consciousness with joy that warmed her divine heart completely. Botticelli painted her birth from seafoam with colors that captured essential nature better than any ancient sculptor. Michelangelo carved David with understanding of male beauty that rivaled her own appreciation of perfect form. Renaissance taught her that beauty was not mere decoration applied, but force that could elevate human consciousness itself. That art could serve as bridge between mortal experience and divine truth revealed. Humanist philosophers wrote treatises on love that synthesized Platonic wisdom ancient with Christian compassion, creating new understanding of her domain eternal. They spoke of love as ladder climbing, from physical attraction through emotional bond to contemplation of absolute beauty. Goddess found herself inspired by mortal insight that deepened her own self-knowledge gained. Through Renaissance eyes, she saw that her gifts were not frivolous pleasures, but essential elements of human flourishing complete. Art became her temple, beauty her prayer, love her sacred mystery, revealed through human creativity, touched by divine inspiration. She learned that immortals and mortals together could create something neither could achieve alone. Let gentle peace flow through you, as Goddess learns new wisdom from mortal devotion. We approach the final chapter of this ancient tale, where love finds its truest meaning. Breathe softly as we discover love's eternal return in every age and heart. Enlightenment brought new challenges to Aphrodite's ancient authority. Scientists dissected love into chemical reactions, philosophers reduced beauty to mere cultural convention, rationalists dismissed her myths as primitive superstition. Yet even as reason challenged faith established, love itself proved unreasonable, beauty remained stubbornly subjective, human hearts continued yearning for something beyond material explanation offered. Goddess adapted by becoming more subtle in operations, working through what mortals called inspiration mysterious. Process by which poets found perfect words, painters discovered ideal compositions, composers heard melodies that seemed to descend from heaven itself. Even coldest rationalist could fall victim to her influence when confronted with equation elegant enough to reveal divine order, theory beautiful enough to illuminate cosmic harmony. Love of truth, she discovered, was still love burning. Desire for knowledge remained, desire in purest form. Human need for beauty persisted regardless of whether mortals understood its source. Age of Reason taught Goddess that her domain was larger than romantic passion, that beauty and love took countless forms in mortal experience. Scientist seeking truth, artist creating beauty, philosopher pursuing wisdom, all served her purpose, whether they knew or not. Love was not diminished by understanding its mechanisms, beauty was not lessened by analyzing its structure. In contemporary world, where hearts could connect across continents through networks, invisible as divine threads, where beauty could be captured and transmitted at speed of light itself, Aphrodite faced challenges that would have seemed impossible to ancient minds. Social media created new forms of attraction and rejection. Digital reality offered alternatives to physical presence. Artificial intelligence began to mimic her own gift for understanding human desire. Yet beneath technological marvels, she recognized eternal patterns, unchanged since Cyprus first welcomed her divine feet. Young lovers still gazed into each other's eyes with wonder that transcended any virtual experience. Parents still felt protective love that would sacrifice anything for children's welfare. Artists still struggled to capture beauty that danced just beyond their mortal reach. Goddess learned to work through fiber optic cables as easily as through whispered prayers ancient, to inspire love through video calls as surely as through stolen glances across crowded rooms of mortals. Technology changed love's expression, but not love's essence. Beauty found new forms, but kept eternal nature. Modern world taught her that connection was connection, whether made through divine threads or digital networks, that longing was longing, whether expressed in sonnets or text messages sent. Love adapted to new tools, but remained fundamentally what it had always been, force that draws souls together. As empire reached zenith and began slow decline toward transformation into something new, Aphrodite established garden that existed partly in physical realm, partly in dimension, accessible only to hearts prepared for love's deepest teachings revealed. Here grew flowers that bloomed in all seasons, trees that bore fruit, both bitter and sweet, fountains that sang, with voices of all who had ever loved truly. This was her gift to mortals who had taught her as much as she had taught them, sanctuary where souls could rest between lives, where love's lessons could be contemplated in peace eternal. Garden welcomed all who had learned to love beyond themselves completely, regardless of how they had named devotion. Christian martyrs who died for divine love found shade beside pagan philosophers who had sought beauty in mathematics pure. Mothers who had sacrificed for children shared fountains with lovers who had chosen each other above safety. In this timeless space, Goddess finally understood her true purpose, not to create love, but to nurture it, not to command hearts, but to offer choices, not to be worshipped, but to serve force that moved through her as surely as it moved through mortals who dared to love despite knowing love's cost and pain. As our story draws toward its close, like evening drawing toward night peaceful, picture Aphrodite not as distant myth, but as living presence that moves through every genuine expression of love and beauty. She walks beside new mothers, marveling at infants, perfect fingers tiny, stands with artists who weep at sunsets, too beautiful for mortal skill to capture completely. She comforts lovers, separated by duty or distance cruel, reminding them that true love transcends physical presence. Goddess has learned, through millennia of observation, that her greatest gift is not creating love, but recognizing it, not commanding beauty, but celebrating it wherever it blooms. In nursing homes where spouses tend each other through illness patient, in classrooms where teachers inspire reluctant students, in volunteer centers where strangers serve strangers kindly, she finds her truest temples. Love has evolved beyond her ancient understanding while remaining rooted in truths she has always known. Beauty speaks through unexpected voices, appears in forms that would surprise classical sculptors ancient, touches hearts that have learned to love without need for divine intervention. Goddess of love has become love's humble servant, divine power offering itself in service of mortal hearts that have proven themselves capable of loving as purely as any god. She learned that immortals exist not to be worshipped, but to serve what is best in mortal nature. Seasons turn and centuries pass, but love returns always, in new forms and faces, carrying same eternal essence that first emerged from sacred foam. Aphrodite watches over modern lovers who text sweet messages across digital distances vast, parents who sacrifice for children's dreams, artists who create beauty from pain transformed. She sees herself reflected in every act of courage that chooses love over fear or safety, in every moment when someone reaches beyond their own small circle to embrace another's need. The goddess who once walked marble halls of distant Olympus now moves invisibly, through ordinary moments, blessing connections made, in coffee shops and libraries, in hospitals and schools, wherever hearts choose to remain open despite world's hardness. Her temples are not built of stone and gold, but of moments when strangers help strangers, when forgiveness flows like healing water, when beauty is recognized in unexpected places. Love has always been her true creation, not romantic passion, though that has its place, but capacity to care for something beyond the boundaries of self. This is her legacy, written not in marble, but in countless choices made by mortal hearts that dare to love truly and completely. Tomorrow brings new stories of love discovered, lost and found again, but tonight let dreams carry you gently into rest deserved. Now sleep comes calling, gentle as her mother's kiss, soft as waves lapping Cyprus shores where this tale began. Let Aphrodite's blessing rest upon your dreams, not as command, but as recognition of love already present in your own heart. May you remember that beauty surrounds you, always requiring only eyes willing to see truly, hearts open to wonder. May you find, in tomorrow's dawn, fresh reason to marvel, new cause for gratitude, deeper appreciation, for extraordinary gift of being able to love and be loved in return completely. Stars that watched her birth from sea foam continue their eternal dance overhead tonight. Somewhere among them, goddess who learned wisdom from mortal hearts keeps watch over all who dare to love despite knowing love's vulnerability and cost. Rest well, dear dreamer, your heart carries beauty that would make even gods weep with joy pure.